"Please don't lift it," she begged, but the rancher did and froze in shock. Wild West stories. Samuel Harper stood at the edge of his ranch, taking a deep breath of the crisp morning air. Life on the ranch had always been simple, even if it was hard. The endless fields of dry grass, the worn wooden fences, the horses grazing quietly in the distance. This was the world Samuel knew, a world where the rhythm of life was steady and predictable. He had learned to rise early, tend to his animals, repair fences, and ensure that everything was in order before the heat of the day set in. It wasn't a glamorous life, but it was honest, and it was the only life he had ever known. Samuel wiped the sweat from his forehead as he adjusted the brim of his weathered hat. His hands, calloused from years of work, moved with ease as he checked the corral gates and called out to the horses. One of them, a chestnut mare named Daisy, whinnied softly in response, and he smiled. There was comfort in the simplicity of these routines, in the familiarity of the land that stretched out for miles around him. Yet, as much as he loved his quiet life, there was always a part of him that wondered if something unexpected might one day break the monotony. That morning, as Samuel was making his way back to the barn, he noticed a figure in the distance. At first, he thought it might be a traveler passing by, which wasn't uncommon in these parts, but as he drew closer, he realized it was a woman. She was carrying a large wooden crate, and she moved with a strange mixture of determination and caution. Her steps were hurried, but there was a carefulness in the way she held the crate, as if it might break or spill its contents at any moment. Samuel's curiosity was immediately piqued. He was a man used to handling heavy objects and dealing with unexpected challenges on the ranch, but this woman seemed out of place. He called out to her, his voice firm but friendly. "Morning, ma'am. Need a hand with that?" The woman froze for a moment, her eyes darting toward him. She looked young, probably in her early 20s, with dark hair that fell messily around her face. There was a tension in her posture, a nervous energy that made Samuel pause. She shook her head quickly and stepped back slightly, almost as if to shield the crate from him. "No, please don't lift it," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Samuel frowned, taken aback by the unusual reaction. "I just want to help," he said. "Carrying that by yourself could be dangerous." The woman's hands trembled slightly as she gripped the crate tighter. I can manage," she insisted, her eyes wide with worry. It's very important that it stays just like it is. Please don't touch it." Samuel studied her for a moment. There was something in her expression that made him pause. He had seen fear before, of course, but this was different. It wasn't the fear of someone running from danger. It was deeper, more desperate. Still, he had always been a helpful man, and the sight of her struggling with such a heavy load tugged at his conscience. He took a step closer, trying to gauge the weight of the crate. It looked awkward and cumbersome, but not impossibly heavy. "Listen, I'm not trying to take it from you," he said gently. "I just want to make sure you don't hurt yourself. One wrong step and that thing could crush your foot." The woman shook her head again, her lips pressed tightly together. "No, you don't understand. It's not just heavy. It's dangerous if it's lifted the wrong way." Her voice was tense, almost frantic now, and Samuel could see that she was genuinely frightened. Despite her warnings, a spark of curiosity ignited in him. Samuel had spent his entire life on this ranch, and he had learned that sometimes the things people tried to hide held secrets worth discovering. He wondered what could be so important, so sensitive, that this young woman would risk her own safety to keep it protected. Still, he hesitated. The last thing he wanted was to frighten her further or make a mistake that could cause harm. The woman's gaze met his, and for a brief moment he saw a flicker of something else in her eyes: urgency, desperation, and perhaps even trust that had not yet been earned. She took a small step back, almost as if she was measuring whether he could be trusted. Samuel took a deep breath, trying to read the situation. He was a man who valued honesty and hard work, and he could tell that she wasn't lying about her fears. Whatever was in that crate, it mattered to her more than anything else. "All right," he said finally, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. "I won't touch it, but maybe you could tell me what's inside. I promise I won't interfere. I just want to understand." The woman hesitated. Her eyes darted toward the horizon, then back at Samuel. She bit her lip and seemed to wrestle with some internal conflict. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible. "It's something that shouldn't be here. I found it, injured, abandoned. I thought I could save it, but I didn't know where else to go. If anyone else finds out, it could be taken away or worse." Samuel nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand, but he could feel the weight of her words. She was carrying not just a crate, but responsibility, fear, and hope all at once. He respected that, and he knew that pushing her could cause more harm than good. They stood in silence for a moment, the morning wind rustling the tall grass around them. The ranch was quiet, the only sounds coming from the horses in the distance and the occasional creak of the barn doors swinging in the gentle breeze. Samuel's mind was racing, filled with questions, but he knew this wasn't the time to press them. Whatever was in that crate, it had a story, and it was a story the woman had to share in her own way. "All right," Samuel said finally, breaking the silence. "I'll leave it be, but if you need anything, water, food, shelter, you can trust me. You're safe here, at least for now." The woman's shoulders sagged slightly, a small sign of relief passing over her face. She nodded, clutching the crate a little less tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know how long I can stay, but I needed someone to trust, someone reliable." Samuel gave a small, reassuring smile. "You found the right place," he said. "This ranch has seen plenty of trouble in its time, but I've learned one thing. People who come here with honesty usually find a way to get through it. You're welcome to stay as long as you need." For the next few minutes, they simply watched the sun rise higher, painting the landscape with golden light. Samuel could feel the tension slowly easing, but there was still an undercurrent of mystery that made him uneasy. Whatever this woman was carrying, he sensed that it was the beginning of something far bigger than either of them could imagine. He walked over to his barn, glancing back at her from time to time. She was standing there, still holding the crate, eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting someone or something to appear. Samuel didn't interfere. He trusted that she knew what she was doing, even if it meant keeping secrets from him for now. In that quiet, vast morning, the ranch felt alive in a new way. There was a sense of anticipation, of a story beginning that neither of them could fully predict. Samuel returned to his work, fixing a broken fence post, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the woman and her mysterious crate. He wondered what she had gone through, how she had come to this isolated place, and what secrets lay within the wooden walls she so desperately protected. By the time the sun was fully above the horizon, casting long shadows across the fields, Samuel had made a silent promise to himself. Whatever happened, he would be ready. This woman and her mysterious burden had come into his life for a reason, and he intended to see it through, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The day stretched on, the ranch bathed in sunlight, but the sense of something extraordinary waiting just beyond the horizon lingered. Samuel Harper, the seasoned rancher, had faced many challenges in his life, but he could feel that this was unlike anything he had encountered before. And as he glanced back at the woman and her crate, he knew one thing with certainty: this was only the beginning. The morning continued to unfold over the Harper Ranch, the sun climbing higher and casting sharp shadows across the rolling plains. Samuel Harper moved through his chores with careful efficiency, though his mind was not on the fence he was repairing or the feed he was distributing to the horses. His thoughts kept drifting back to the young woman and the mysterious wooden crate she had brought with her. He could not shake the image of her wide, fearful eyes and the trembling way she clutched the crate, as if it held not only something precious, but also dangerous. Samuel had always been a man of curiosity, tempered by years of experience and a sense of caution. He had handled wild animals, unpredictable weather, and stubborn livestock, but he had never encountered anything like this. The woman's warnings echoed in his mind. "Please, don't lift it." Her plea was simple, yet the urgency behind it made it impossible to ignore. He felt a strange pull, a mixture of concern, curiosity, and responsibility that made him glance back toward her every few minutes. The young woman had settled near the edge of the corral, placing the crate carefully on the ground. She did not relax completely. Instead, she crouched slightly, one hand resting on the crate as though it was a lifeline. Samuel approached cautiously, making sure not to startle her. He had learned over the years that patience and calmness were often more effective than force or insistence, especially when dealing with nervous animals or nervous people. "Morning again," he called softly, his voice carrying across the open field. "How's the crate holding up?" The woman's head shot up, her dark eyes wary but slightly less panicked than before. "It's fine," she said, her voice small but steady. I can't let anyone see inside yet, not until it's safe." Samuel nodded, taking a slow step closer. "I understand," he said. "But you've got to tell me something, even if it's just a little, so I know how to help. You don't have to reveal everything. I just need to know if it's dangerous or if it needs careful handling." She hesitated, biting her lip and glancing nervously toward the horizon. "It's not something people should be around," she admitted quietly. "It's alive, and it's scared just like I am. If it senses the wrong thing, it might hurt someone. I can't let that happen." Samuel's eyebrows shot up slightly. Alive. That meant whatever was in the crate wasn't just an object, it was a creature. His mind raced. In all his years on the ranch, he had encountered wild animals before. Snakes, coyotes, and even the occasional mountain lion, but nothing that would require such extreme secrecy. Whatever she had found, it must be rare or maybe injured. That explained her anxiety. He took another cautious step forward. "I see," he said slowly. "I won't touch it, I promise. But if it's scared, maybe I can help calm it." Animals can sense people, and sometimes they react better if they trust the person near them. The woman's eyes met his, and for a moment, Samuel thought he saw a flicker of hope mixed with uncertainty. She bit her lip again, weighing whether she could trust him. Finally, she spoke. It's not just scared, it's dangerous in the wrong hands, and if anyone else finds it, they wouldn't understand. They'd take it, or worse. That's why I ran from the town and brought it here. This ranch is the only place I could think of that might be safe." Samuel felt a pang of sympathy. He had seen fear before, and he knew what it was like to carry a secret, especially one that could change a person's life or someone else's. "All right," he said, "I won't touch it. But maybe you can show me how to help without opening it yet. That way, if it's hungry or needs water, you won't have to risk carrying it again." She hesitated, then slowly nodded. She moved carefully to the barn, motioning for Samuel to follow at a safe distance. Inside, the ranch smelled of hay, leather, and the faint scent of animals. The barn was dimly lit by the morning sun streaming through the gaps in the wooden walls, creating long, dusty beams of light that cut across the floor. She placed the crate in a corner, far from the horses, and knelt beside it. "It doesn't like noise," she whispered. "Even a small sound can make it panic. If it panics, it could break free and hurt someone or itself." Samuel crouched beside her, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "I understand," he said softly. "We'll be careful." For a few minutes they worked in silence, preparing a small area with blankets and a shallow water dish. Samuel was careful to keep his hands visible and gentle, moving slowly around her as she adjusted the crate. She seemed tense, constantly glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone or something to appear. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I found it on the outskirts of the canyon. It was injured, trapped under some rocks. I couldn't leave it there. I tried asking for help in town, but people didn't care, or they were afraid. I knew I had to bring it somewhere safe." Samuel's curiosity grew, but he forced himself to remain calm. "You did the right thing," he said. "It's lucky you found this place. I've seen a lot on this ranch and I know how to handle animals carefully. If it needs care, I can help. We'll do this together." She looked at him with a mixture of relief and doubt. "I hope you know what you're saying," she murmured. "It's not like a horse or a cow. It's different. And if anyone finds out about it, there's no telling what might happen." Samuel nodded solemnly. He had learned long ago that the Wild West could be unforgiving and secrets were fragile. One wrong move, one person who didn't understand, could change everything. He respected her caution, and he promised himself he would be careful. Hours passed and the tension in the barn slowly eased. The woman began to relax slightly, moving with less urgency, though she never fully let her guard down. Samuel watched her, impressed by her determination and courage. It was not easy to carry such a responsibility alone, and yet she had done so without complaint, relying only on herself and her wits. By mid-afternoon, Samuel's curiosity had grown too strong to ignore completely. He knew he had to make a decision soon. Every instinct told him to leave the crate alone, to respect her warnings and trust that she knew best. Yet, another part of him, the part that had always faced challenges head-on, wanted to see for himself what lay inside. It wasn't just curiosity. It was the responsibility that came with knowing something extraordinary might be at hand. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. Lifting that crate could be dangerous, but not lifting it might leave the creature, or whatever was inside, at risk. He thought about the animals he had cared for over the years, about the times he had stepped into situations others avoided, and he knew that sometimes caution had to be balanced with action. The woman watched him closely, sensing his internal struggle. "You don't have to do it," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. "I can manage, I promise. Just please don't lift it, not yet." Samuel paused, his hand hovering near the crate. He could feel the tension in the air, the unspoken warning that whatever was inside could change everything. His heart pounded in his chest, a mixture of excitement and fear. He had faced danger before, but this felt different. It was personal. It was unpredictable. And yet he could not walk away. Finally, he made a decision. He would lift the crate, but slowly, carefully, with caution. He would do everything he could to avoid harm, to respect the creature's space, and to protect the young woman who had entrusted him with this secret. Taking a deep breath, he bent his knees and placed his hands under the crate, feeling the weight shift slightly as he prepared to lift. The woman's eyes widened and she reached out, her hands trembling. "No, wait," she cried. "Please don't." Samuel froze for a moment, torn between hesitation and action. The warning in her voice was clear, urgent, almost desperate. Yet he could sense that the moment for careful action had arrived. He tightened his grip, took a slow breath and lifted. The crate was heavier than he expected, almost as if it resisted movement. Samuel's muscles strained, and he felt a shiver run down his spine. He glanced at the woman, whose face was pale with fear and anticipation. Whatever was inside the crate was alive, aware, and perhaps sensing the shift in its surroundings. Samuel's heart pounded, knowing that this was no ordinary task. As he lifted, a strange sensation ran through him, a combination of surprise, awe, and caution. The crate was not just heavy, it seemed, alive in a way he had never experienced. Samuel froze for a moment, holding it in place, his mind racing with questions. What was inside? How had it come to be here? And most importantly, what would happen next? The young woman watched him, her breath shallow, as the moment stretched into a tense silence. The ranch, usually so calm and predictable, seemed to hold its breath along with them. And in that quiet, golden afternoon light, Samuel realized that this moment would change everything. Samuel's hands trembled slightly as he held the crate. the weight pressing into his arms in a way that was heavier than he had expected. The young woman, Leela, stood frozen beside him, her wide eyes fixed on his every move. Her whispered plea still echoed in his mind. "Please, don't lift it." Yet he had made his choice. Curiosity, responsibility, and a strange sense of destiny had compelled him to act. Now, as he balanced the crate carefully in his arms, he could feel something extraordinary waiting within it. The barn seemed to shrink around them. The sounds of the horses outside faded into silence, leaving only the faint creak of the wooden floor beneath Samuel's boots. Dust particles floated in the golden sunlight streaming through the cracks in the barn walls, catching the light and making the moment feel almost otherworldly. Every muscle in his body was tense, every nerve alert. Samuel had lifted heavy loads before, but this was different. This crate was not just heavy, it felt alive, as if it carried its own heartbeat, its own awareness. Leela's hands hovered near the crate, her fingers trembling. "Samuel, please," she whispered again, her voice tight with fear and urgency. "You don't know what you're holding. It could react any moment. Please put it down carefully." He nodded slowly, his own pulse racing. "I understand," he said, his voice calm despite the pounding of his heart. "But I need to see it. I need to know what you've been protecting so fiercely." Leela's gaze flickered toward him, a mixture of fear, worry, and trust. She had brought this creature to the ranch because she had nowhere else to go, and now, against her better judgment, Samuel was about to discover the truth. She swallowed hard, unable to stop the tremor in her voice. "It's not what you expect," she said softly. "It's different. You have to be careful. It's scared. And it doesn't understand people, not yet." Samuel adjusted his grip, shifting the crate slightly so that it was steadier in his arms. He could feel movement from within, faint but undeniable. The crate shifted slightly, as if something inside was adjusting, trying to find its balance. He froze for a moment, holding it steady, and then took a deep breath. Whatever was inside, he knew it was alive. Alive, scared, and utterly dependent on them both. Carefully, he set the crate down on a stack of hay in the corner of the barn. The sound of wood scraping against the straw made Leela flinch, and she instinctively moved closer, her hands hovering over the crate as if ready to intervene. Samuel leaned forward slightly, keeping his movements deliberate and gentle. "I'm going to open it slowly," he whispered. "We'll see what's inside, but I won't hurt it, not if I can help it." Leela nodded, her eyes wide and fixed on him. "Please be careful," she said. "One wrong move and you don't know what could happen. It's delicate and frightened. That's the most dangerous part." Samuel's fingers traced the edges of the crate. He could feel the roughness of the wood, the nails holding it together, and the faint vibrations coming from within. The movement was subtle, but it was enough to send a shiver down his spine. He began to lift the top of the crate slowly, carefully, as if each movement could awaken something unpredictable. The moment the lid shifted, a strange, low sound emerged from the crate, a soft, trembling whine that made Samuel freeze. He leaned back slightly, listening, his heart racing. The sound was unlike anything he had heard before. It was not loud, but it was full of emotion, fear, confusion, and a desperate plea for understanding. Leela's hand shot out, covering her mouth as she whispered, there it is. Don't startle it, just let it see you." Samuel nodded, his eyes fixed on the inside of the crate, and then he saw it. It was a creature unlike anything he had expected. Its body was small but fragile, covered in fur that shimmered in the sunlight filtering through the barn. Its eyes, large and dark, stared at him with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The creature's ears twitched at the slightest sound, and its tiny paws pressed against the walls of the crate as if testing the limits of its prison. Samuel froze, caught between awe and caution. "It's real," he whispered, almost to himself. "I can't believe it." Leela nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "I found it injured," she said softly. "It was trapped under rocks near the canyon. I didn't know what to do, so I brought it here. I had to save it or it would have died." Samuel leaned closer, keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. The creature took a tentative step back, its small body shaking slightly, but it did not retreat entirely. It seemed to be studying him, just as he was studying it. There was intelligence in its gaze, a kind of awareness that made Samuel's heart swell with wonder. He turned to Leela. "It's amazing," he said. "Do you know what it is?" She shook her head, her eyes fixed on the creature. I only know that it's rare, very rare. People in town would never understand. They'd want to capture it or worse. That's why I ran, that's why I brought it here. I couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands." Samuel's mind raced. He had seen animals before, some wild and dangerous, others gentle and loyal. But this creature was different. It was delicate and intelligent, aware of its surroundings in a way that was almost human. He could feel the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. Whatever this creature was, it depended on them both now, on Leela's courage and his judgment. He took another cautious step closer, keeping his hands open and calm. "We'll protect it," he said softly. "I promise. I'll help you take care of it. We'll make sure it's safe." Leela nodded, relief washing over her face, but her eyes remained filled with worry. "It won't trust easily," she warned. "Not yet. You have to be patient. If it senses danger, it might react. You have to be ready." Samuel swallowed hard, the tension in the barn thick around them. He had faced danger before, but nothing like this. This was not just physical risk. This was moral, emotional, and unpredictable. The creature's fate, and perhaps their own safety, hung in the balance. For several minutes, they simply watched the small animal, observing its movements, its breathing, and its reactions. The barn was silent except for the faint rustle of hay and the creature's soft whines. Samuel could feel the bond forming, an unspoken understanding passing between him, Leela, and the fragile life before them. Finally, Leela spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's safe here for now, but we have to be careful. We can't let anyone know about it. Not until it's strong enough, not until it trusts us completely. That's the only way it can survive." Samuel nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of her words. He had always known that life on the ranch required patience and care, but this was something different. This was a test of character, courage, and empathy, and he was determined to rise to the challenge. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, Samuel and Leela worked together, moving hay around the crate, making a soft bedding, and placing a shallow water dish nearby. Every action was deliberate, careful, and slow. The creature watched them the entire time, its eyes bright with curiosity and cautious trust. Samuel could feel the tension gradually easing, replaced by a fragile sense of hope. "This is just the beginning," Leela said quietly, almost to herself. "It's going to take time, but it can survive." Samuel looked down at the small creature and then at Leela. "And we'll be here," he said firmly. "We'll make sure it does." In that quiet barn, the three of them, man, woman, and creature, shared a moment of fragile peace. Outside, the sun blazed over the endless plains, but inside, a different kind of light filled the space. A light of trust, courage, and the beginning of an extraordinary story that none of them could have imagined. The day stretched into evening, and Samuel could feel the weight of responsibility settling firmly on his shoulders. Whatever lay ahead, he knew that this moment, this choice to lift the crate, to face the unknown, and to trust in the fragile life within, would change everything. And deep down, he could sense that nothing on the ranch, or in the Wild West beyond it, would ever be quite the same again. The barn was quiet except for the soft rustling of straw and the faint sound of the creature's trembling movements inside the crate. Samuel Harper and Leela stood nearby, their eyes locked on the small, fragile life before them. The sun had begun to dip lower in the sky, casting long, golden shadows that stretched across the worn wooden floor. The moment felt both tense and magical, as if time itself had slowed to allow them to understand the gravity of what they had uncovered. Samuel's hands were still slightly sore from lifting the crate, but that physical ache paled in comparison to the mental weight he now carried. The creature was not merely rare, it was extraordinary. Its large, dark eyes followed his every movement, and there was a depth to its gaze that he had never seen in any animal before. It was intelligent, aware, and deeply cautious. Samuel could feel the creature assessing him, testing whether he could be trusted. He realized that trust would not come easily, and it would require patience, gentleness, and unwavering care. Leela stepped closer, her voice soft but firm. "It's not like anything people in town have ever seen," she said. "It's unique, special. That's why I had to bring it here. If anyone else knew, they'd see it as a prize or a threat, not a life that needs protection." Samuel nodded, absorbing her words. He had faced danger before, but this was different. This was a test of judgment, of empathy, and of responsibility. One wrong move could frighten the creature, and one mistake could put all of them at risk. He moved slowly toward the crate, keeping his hands open and visible, trying to convey calm and safety. The creature flinched at his approach, its small body shrinking back slightly. Samuel froze, allowing it the space to adjust. He remembered Leela's warnings. It doesn't understand people yet. If it senses danger, it could react. He realized that his every movement mattered, that patience was now the most important tool he had. Leela reached out a hand to stroke the edge of the crate, her touch gentle and deliberate. "It's scared," she whispered. "That's why it reacts. You have to be calm, show it you're not a threat." Samuel took a deep breath and slowly sat down on the floor, keeping his back straight but relaxed. He kept his hands resting on his knees, palms up, a gesture that seemed to signal openness rather than dominance. The creature's ears twitched and it tilted its head, observing him carefully. Samuel held his gaze, speaking softly in a low, steady voice. "We're not going to hurt you," he said. "You're safe here. We just want to help." For several minutes, the barn was filled with a tense silence. The creature shifted slightly, testing the boundaries of its new surroundings. Samuel could feel a connection beginning to form, a fragile thread of trust weaving between them. Leela watched closely, her hands clasped tightly in front of her chest. She had seen the creature respond to kindness before, but she knew that fear could undo all progress in an instant. Finally, the creature took a small, tentative step forward. Its movements were cautious, almost tentative, and it stopped just a few feet from Samuel and Leela. Its eyes remained wide and alert, scanning every detail, but it no longer trembled as violently. Samuel's heart lifted. The first sign of trust had appeared, small but significant. Leela let out a soft breath. "See," she whispered. "It's curious. It's beginning to understand that we're not going to hurt it." Samuel nodded, feeling a surge of relief, but he also knew that the creature was still fragile. Any sudden noise, movement, or touch could trigger fear or panic. He needed to be careful, to guide it gently without forcing it into submission. This was not just about handling an animal. It was about understanding a being that had never known safety or kindness. As the afternoon sun continued to dip, Samuel and Leela began to prepare a small area for the creature. They moved straw to create a soft bedding and carefully placed a shallow water dish nearby. Every movement was deliberate, every sound measured. The creature watched them the entire time, its small body tense but slowly relaxing as it observed their actions. "Do you know what it eats?" Samuel asked gently, breaking the silence. Leela shook her head. I'm not sure." "It survived in the wild for so long that it knows how to find food. But I've been keeping it on small pieces of meat and some berries I found near the canyon. It seems to eat them without fear, but we need to be careful not to give it anything harmful." Samuel nodded, absorbing the information. He had dealt with livestock and wild animals before, but this was unlike anything he had ever encountered. He realized that care would require more than just feeding and sheltering. It would require observation, patience, and constant attention to the creature's reactions. Hours passed, and the creature gradually became more comfortable. It moved around the small area they had prepared, sniffing at the straw and examining the water dish. Samuel and Leela kept their distance, allowing it to explore while remaining close enough to intervene if necessary. The creature's movements were deliberate and intelligent, and Samuel could see a spark of curiosity in its eyes. "You can see it learning," Leela whispered, a hint of awe in her voice. "It's figuring out that we're not a threat. That's why we have to be patient. It will trust us when it's ready, not before." Samuel nodded, understanding the delicate balance between caution and care. He realized that this creature's survival depended not only on their actions, but on their ability to earn its trust. Any mistake could undo hours of progress and place all of them in danger. As evening approached, the ranch took on a quieter, almost serene atmosphere. The horses had settled in the paddocks, and the golden light of the setting sun bathed the plains in a warm glow. Samuel and Leela continued to watch the creature, noting its reactions and adjusting their approach as needed. Each small sign of trust, a tentative step forward, a relaxed posture, a cautious sniff, was a victory, a sign that their careful efforts were working. "It's incredible," Samuel said softly. "I've seen a lot in my life, but nothing like this. It's smart, aware, and completely unlike anything I've handled before." Leela nodded, her eyes shining with pride and relief. "That's why I had to bring it here. I couldn't leave it out there, not alone, not injured, not with people who wouldn't understand. Here at least it has a chance." Samuel smiled faintly, feeling a deep sense of responsibility. "We'll make sure it survives. We'll protect it, keep it safe, and help it heal. No matter what it takes." The creature, seemingly understanding the promise in his voice, took a small step closer. Its eyes remained wide and alert, but the tension in its body had lessened. Samuel felt a connection forming, fragile but undeniable. It was a bond built on trust, patience, and mutual understanding, a bond that could not be forced but had to grow naturally. As night began to fall, the barn took on a different character. The shadows lengthened, and the air grew cooler. Samuel and Leela prepared a small space for the creature to rest, ensuring that it was comfortable and protected. They both knew that the night would be a critical test. Darkness could trigger fear, and they needed to be ready to respond calmly and carefully. They sat together on the floor, watching over the creature as it explored its new surroundings. Every sound, every movement was noticed and processed, both by the creature and by them. The barn, usually a place of routine and predictability, had transformed into a place of suspense, learning, and quiet wonder. "It trusts us more than it did this morning," Leela said softly, almost to herself. "But it's still fragile. We can't rush it. We have to be patient always." Samuel nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He had faced danger, hardship, and uncertainty before, but this was different. This was a test of character, empathy, and the ability to guide a fragile life through fear and uncertainty. And he was determined to rise to the challenge. The night settled over the ranch, and the stars began to twinkle in the clear western sky. Inside the barn, the creature finally curled up on the soft bedding they had prepared, its body still tense but calmer than before. Samuel and Leela exchanged a quiet glance, understanding that this was a significant step. The creature had survived the day, had begun to trust them, and had shown signs of resilience and intelligence that were nothing short of extraordinary. In the quiet of the night, Samuel reflected on the events of the day. He had lifted the crate, faced the unknown, and discovered a life that was rare, delicate, and dependent on their care. The responsibility weighed heavily on him, but it was a responsibility he accepted willingly. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new tests of patience and judgment, and possibly new dangers. But for now, the creature was safe, and that was enough. Leela settled down nearby, keeping a watchful eye on the creature as she drifted into a light, cautious sleep. Samuel remained awake a little longer, thinking, planning and quietly marveling at the extraordinary being before him. Whatever this creature was, it had changed everything. Their lives, their routines, and even the rhythm of the ranch had been altered forever. And as the night deepened, one thing became clear to Samuel Harper. This was only the beginning of a journey that would test courage, patience, and trust in ways he had never imagined. The morning sun crept slowly over the Harper Ranch, spilling golden light across the plains and casting long shadows that danced over the barn. Samuel Harper had been awake for hours, sitting quietly near the creature's resting area, watching it with careful attention. Though it had spent the night curled on the soft bedding, its small body tensed at even the slightest noise. Samuel knew that trust would take time, but the creature had made progress. Every movement, every glance, and every small step it took was a sign that their patience and care were beginning to pay off. Leela joined him quietly, her steps light on the wooden floor. She carried a small dish of fresh water and a handful of berries, moving slowly to avoid startling the creature. "It's hungry," she whispered, "but we have to give it a little at a time. Too much at once could make it afraid or sick." Samuel nodded, his eyes never leaving the creature. "I understand," he said softly. "It's learning that we won't hurt it. That's the most important thing right now." The creature's dark eyes followed Leela's movements, its small ears twitching as it sniffed the air. Samuel could feel a connection forming, a fragile but unmistakable bond between human and creature. He reached out a hand slowly, palm up, letting the creature see that he meant no harm. It hesitated for a moment, then took a tentative step toward him, its tiny body shaking slightly but moving forward nonetheless. "That's it," Leela whispered, a soft smile on her face. "See, it's beginning to trust you." The day passed in careful observation and gentle care. Samuel and Leela worked together, providing small amounts of food, cleaning the area, and keeping the creature comfortable. They spoke softly, their voices calm and soothing, knowing that even their tone could influence how the creature felt. Each success, no matter how small, was a victory. The creature moved more confidently, its eyes bright and alert, and it began to explore its new surroundings with curiosity rather than fear. As the afternoon wore on, Samuel felt a sense of pride and responsibility. This was no ordinary animal. It was intelligent, aware, and capable of forming bonds with those who treated it with care. He realized that their duty extended beyond feeding and sheltering. It was about teaching the creature that trust, safety, and kindness existed in the world. And he was determined to fulfill that duty, no matter the challenges. Leela sat beside him, her hand resting gently on the creature's back as it explored the hay. "It's amazing," she said softly. "I never thought it would survive after what happened in the canyon." "You've both given it a chance it might never have had." Samuel smiled faintly, feeling the weight of her words. "It's not just me," he said. "It's you too. You saved it by bringing it here. We're just helping it see that it's safe now." As the sun began to sink lower in the sky, casting a warm orange glow across the barn, a new challenge presented itself. The creature had begun to move more boldly, testing the boundaries of its temporary home. Samuel realized that soon it would be time to consider what came next. They could not keep it confined forever. It belonged to the wild, and its freedom would be the ultimate test of trust and care. Leela looked at him, her expression serious but hopeful. "We have to prepare it," she said. "It needs to learn to survive on its own again. It's not ready yet, but soon it will be. We have to give it the chance to be free." Samuel nodded, understanding the importance of her words. He had spent his life on the ranch, protecting animals and land, but he knew that freedom was the truest gift they could give this creature. The bond they had formed did not mean ownership. It meant responsibility, care, and eventually letting go. They spent the next few days carefully preparing for this transition. Samuel and Leela worked together to create a small, safe area outside the barn where the creature could explore more freely. They introduced it gradually to the open air, letting it sniff the fresh grass, feel the wind, and experience the sunlight on its fur. Each day, it became bolder, more confident, and more willing to explore the world beyond the confines of the barn. One morning, Samuel stood at the edge of the small fenced area, watching the creature move cautiously through the grass. Its eyes sparkled with curiosity, and its small body moved with a mixture of caution and excitement. Leela knelt nearby, speaking softly to it, her voice calm and encouraging. "You're ready," she whispered. "It's time to show you that you can be free." Samuel felt a mixture of pride and sadness. They had nurtured this creature, protected it, and earned its trust, but the ultimate test of care was letting it go. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. "It's time," he said softly. Leela nodded, her eyes glistening with emotion. Together, they opened a small gate leading to a wide, open part of the plains beyond the ranch. The creature paused at the threshold, glancing back at them as if acknowledging the bond they had shared. Then, with a cautious but determined step, it moved forward into the open land. Samuel and Leela watched in silence, hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. The creature paused again, sniffing the air, then darted forward, running with a newfound confidence. It leaped over small rocks and dashed through the tall grass, its movements fluid and natural. Samuel felt a surge of relief and pride. The creature was alive, strong, and free. Leela let out a quiet laugh, a mixture of joy and relief. "It did it," she said softly. "It's free." Samuel nodded, a smile breaking across his face. "It's amazing," he said. "It survived, and it's stronger than we imagined. We gave it a chance and it took it." For several minutes, they simply watched the creature disappear into the distance, its small form moving gracefully across the plains. The bond they had formed would remain in their hearts, a memory of trust, care, and courage that neither time nor distance could erase. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Samuel and Leela returned to the barn. They worked quietly, cleaning up and preparing for the night, but the sense of peace that filled the ranch was undeniable. They had faced uncertainty, fear, and responsibility, and they had come through it together. Leela turned to Samuel, her eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you," she said simply. "I couldn't have done it without you. You understood what it needed, even when I couldn't explain it." Samuel smiled, placing a hand on her shoulder. "No, thank you," he said. "You trusted me. You brought it here and gave it a chance. We did this together." That night, as the stars appeared in the clear western sky, Samuel stood outside, looking out over the plains. The world felt alive, vast, and full of possibilities. He thought about the creature, about the journey they had shared, and about the lessons he had learned. Trust, patience, and courage were more than words. They were actions that could change lives, even in the smallest, most fragile ways. Leela joined him, standing quietly at his side. They watched the night sky together, feeling the peace that came from knowing they had done the right thing. The creature was out there somewhere, safe and free, and that knowledge filled them with a quiet sense of triumph. In the days that followed, life on the Harper Ranch slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. The chores, the animals, and the land continued to demand attention, but the memory of the creature remained, a reminder of courage, compassion, and the extraordinary moments that could appear in the most ordinary places. Samuel often thought back to the moment he had lifted the crate, to the fear, the anticipation, and the awe that had followed. That single act of choice had set a chain of events in motion, one that had tested his patience, his judgment, and his heart. And in the end, it had rewarded him with something far greater than he could have imagined. A story of survival, trust, and the deep, unspoken bond between beings who understood each other without words. Leela stayed on the ranch for several more days, helping Samuel with the work and sharing stories of her travels and discoveries. Together, they talked quietly about the creature, about its journey, and about the importance of protecting the wild and the fragile. There was a sense of connection between them, forged in shared responsibility and respect, and it was a connection that neither would forget. Finally, the day came when Leela prepared to leave the ranch. She had other places to go, other lives to touch, but she turned to Samuel one last time, a soft smile on her face. "It was more than I ever hoped for," she said. "Thank you for everything, for understanding, for helping, for trusting." Samuel nodded, tipping his hat. "Take care of yourself," he said, "and remember, the world has its surprises. Sometimes the smallest, most fragile things can change everything." With that, Leela rode off toward the horizon, leaving Samuel alone on the ranch. He watched her disappear into the distance, then turned back toward the barn and the quiet plains beyond. The sun had set completely now, leaving a sky full of stars that stretched endlessly above him. In that stillness, he felt a profound sense of peace. The creature was safe. Leela had found a trusted friend in him, and the Harper Ranch had become a place where courage, patience, and compassion had triumphed. And though the ranch returned to its quiet rhythm, Samuel knew that his life, and the lives of those he had touched, would never be the same again. Some stories, he realized, were too extraordinary to ever be forgotten. The Wild West was full of dangers and surprises, but it was also full of moments like this, moments where trust, kindness, and bravery could create something truly remarkable. Samuel Harper stood in the cool night air, the stars above twinkling like tiny witnesses to the day's events, and he understood that this was one of those rare, unforgettable moments. And somewhere out on the plains, the creature roamed freely, alive, safe, and thriving, carrying with it the bond and trust that had been forged in a quiet barn on a small ranch in the Wild West.